Erev Shabbos, everyone. Erev Shabbos, Parshas Haazinu, second to last Parsha of the Torah. Erev Shabbos, almost Erev Sukkos, Motzi Yom Kippur. A lot of incredible energy this Shabbos. We said many times over Yom Kippur, we said the pasuk, Ki b'yom hazeh yechaper aleichem, on this day, it will be a day of kapara, a day of atonement, l'tayr eschem, in order to purify you. So it calls it two things. It calls Yom Kippur a day of kapara and a day of tara. That is, Ki b'yom hazeh yechaper aleichem, it's going to be a day of kapara for you, and it's going to be a day of l'taher. It's going to be a day to purify. So you have to wonder what's the difference between kapara and tara, between atonement and purity. So atonement, I think, is relatively easy in the sense that kapara is really forgiveness. You did an avera, and there were negative consequences. You asked God for mechila, you asked God for pardon. You did tshuva, you get a kapara. So then God forgives you for what you've done. Yechaper aleichem. That's what the day of Yom Kippur is. Ki b'yom hazeh yechaper aleichem. This day is going to be mechaper. It's going to atone for you. It's going to atone for the sins that you've done. But what's tara? Because tara is something very different. Because when a person does an avera, a person does a transgression, so then he becomes a different person. There is shmutz, there's spiritual dirt that he places on himself. There's a change that takes place in his spiritual makeup. And therefore he becomes tameh, he becomes impure. And even after kapara, even after a person is forgiven, so then there is still that tumah, there is still that impurity. So Hashem promises that if you do real tshuva, if a person really makes a decision to change themselves and does the things that's necessary, so then there are two things that happen. Kapara happens, and then tara happens. There are two different stages. One is being forgiven, and one is where it gets lifted up. One is where you become, you get rebuilt as this person of purity. You get put back into the place where you need to be put, where you need to exist. They ask the question, there's a statement in the Talmud that says that the nations of the world don't have tshuva. And everybody throws their hands up in the air and says, what are you talking about? They don't have tshuva. They don't have the ability to be able to repent. What about the city of Nineveh? What about the whole story with Yonah? Clearly they have an ability to be able to repent. So perhaps an explanation is that they have an ability to be able to get a kapara. They can get forgiven, but not tara. To become an elevated person, to become a changed spiritual being, that they don't have the ability. That's a gift that's given to the Jewish people. On Yom Kippur, we get the kapara. On Yom Kippur, we get forgiven. But the tara, the becoming an elevated person, that only comes after Yom Kippur. When you take all of those things from Yom Kippur and you put them into effect, all of those desires, those thoughts, all of those hachlatos, those decisions that you had on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, you can say when you own some kippur, when on Rosh Hashanah you thought about the Yom Kippur, you said, yeah, these are them. This is what this year is going to look like. When the year starts to look like that, when you put them into practice, that's when you gain a tara. That's when you gain purity. That's when you become an elevated person. L'tayr eschem Sukkos. Just like by a mikvah, when you go into the mikvah, you don't become pure until you come out of the mikvah. Yom Kippur is like a mikvah. You walk into the Yom Kippur, you walk into the mikvah, and you only become pure, you only become a tar, you only become something, an elevated person, once you step outside of the mikvah. They told a beautiful story with the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek, a great Rebbe, would go to the mikvah every day, but especially on Erev Shabbos, when he would go to the mikvah, he would come out of the mikvah, he would glow like an ethereal being. He would glow like Moshe Rabbeinu. It was just, and anybody that would see it would become spiritually elevated and become totally ecstatic from seeing this sight. People would line the streets in order to be able to see the Rebbe come out of the mikvah. When the Rebbe caught wind that people were doing this, he didn't like it at all, and he made a rule that no one is allowed to be there when he comes out of the mikvah. They're not allowed to line the streets. No one is allowed to ogle. No one is allowed to watch. When he comes out of the mikvah, he goes home, and that's it. And people respected that. They didn't come out into the street. There were two chassidim that were sitting in a house. They were looking out a window. They saw the Rebbe. They saw the street, and they saw that there were some sheep in the street. And the one turns to the other and says, I wish I was a tzigala. So I wish I was a sheep. So why do you want to be a sheep? He says, because the sheep get to watch the Rebbe. The sheep get to see him. And if only I could just see the Rebbe, it would mean so much to me. So the guy says, what are you out of your mind? You want to become a tzegel? You want to become a sheep? Don't be silly. You're a human being. You're an elevated human being. What do you want to be a sheep for? So they decided to take the question to a Rav. They went and asked a Shiloh. So the Rav listened to both sides, and he turned to the guy that wanted to be a sheep, and he said to him, you're right. It's worth it to become a tzegel. It's worth it to become a sheep, just to be able to see the Rebbe in his Tara, to see the Rebbe in his purity, to see the Rebbe in his Tzelem Elokim, to see him in his divine image, but only on one condition. And that's the condition that afterwards you become a person and you do something with that vision. That you don't just watch the Rebbe. You don't just look at him. You don't just get inspired by him, but you turn that into something real. That's when it's okay to become a sheep. If afterwards you stay an animal, then what was the purpose? What's so great about seeing purity? Unless purity becomes a part of you. Kapara, it's a great thing. Yom Kippur, to be atoned, it's a great thing. But it's all what you make of it. If you stay a tzigula, if you stay a sheep, if you're missing the main purpose of l'tayar eschem, to reach that place of purity, that place of elevation, to do something with all of that which you experienced on Yom Kippur, then it's worth something. But if you can't do anything with it, if it was just an awesome Yom Kippur, if it was just a great day and it was inspiring, it was so inspiring, but it just stays there and it doesn't translate into every fiber of your existence, then you're nothing more than a sheep looking at something amazing. But a human being sees something amazing and turns it into their lives. Yom Kippur just happened. It was awesome. It was amazing. The fasting, the davening, the uplifting ourselves. But now it's got to turn into something. And that's why Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us Sukkos. Because with Sukkos, he gave us the ability, the vehicle, to be able to turn this into something and not just leave it as an inspiration, as a moment. Not just to leave us like sheep, but to make us into humans. Humans get inspired, and then humans move, and they climb, and they go, and they do, and they become. And that's what we're meant to be doing now. From Yom Kippur till Sukkos, through Sukkos, is shaping who we want to be. Not just framing. That was Yom Kippur. But now taking that framing and turning it into reality and doing something with that, shaping who we want to be. That's what we need to be doing now. Now we need to take that kapara of Yom Kippur, ki bayom hazeh yechaper aleichem, and now bring it to its real point, l'tayar eschem, in order to be able to purify ourselves and to become the magnificent people that we pine away to become, to do with ourselves that which we are capable of doing to reach for greatness. Everyone should have an awesome Shabbos, an awesome Sukkos, and should become the awesome people that we want to become.